Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, December the 16th, and here in Philadelphia, it's snowing. They've been predicting that a nor'easter would come in, and like clockwork this afternoon at 1 o'clock, it started, and it's still snowing outside. It's nice and warm in here, though, and I'm glad I can come to you. First, I want to acknowledge the comments from last week's episode, and I want to thank those of you who took the time to write and share. I wanted to commend you for your thoughtfulness, your reflection, thinking about social media. I want to thank you for your honesty. And I know some of you shared some things that were not particularly pleasant. And so I wanted to thank you for that and for opening up that way. I hope you had a chance to read those comments as I did. And it was a delight at the very end to find a comment by an old friend and a former colleague, Quentin Schultz, Dr. Quentin Schultz, who is now retired from Calvin University. Quinn and I were co-conspirators, I guess you could say, years ago when I was at St. Mary's and he was at Calvin, and we collaborated in the Religious Communication Association. Also, Quinn taught our daughter, Brooke, who was a major in communication at Calvin. And so Quinn and I have a lot in common. I would consider him a good friend and a colleague. I watched Quinn's video with great interest, and it's linked at the bottom of the comments section. And I would encourage you to watch it as well. I would highly recommend it. It's worth the time that you would spend, and I think you'll find that he has quite a bit of explanatory force in that video. Second, I'd like to acknowledge that Quinn's comments have an influenced the direction of today's video. I'm still working on a video and another episode related to social media, and want to give a kind of a case study, if you will. But I'm doing more work on that, more research, so I can do that and do it well. Today's episode is entitled Talking to Strangers. And that title is taken directly from Malcolm Gladwell's most recent book by that same name. The men's small group from my church studied that book together last year, and I found it to be an interesting book. Gladwell wrote that book, and it was precipitated by an incident that took place on a highway outside of Prairie View A&M University in Texas. A woman by the name of Sandra Bland had just been hired by that university, and on the afternoon of July the 10th, 2015, Sandra Bland was leaving campus to go buy some groceries. She was pulled over by Officer Brian Insania. And after an unfortunate exchange that escalated out of control, Bland was arrested and taken to jail, where 3 days later she committed suicide. In the book, Gladwell tells the story of how two worlds collided that afternoon on a Texas highway. And what appeared to be an exchange between two American citizens was really a meeting of strangers, people from two quite different cultures. Gladwell goes on in the introduction of the book to talk about the battles in 16th century Europe. And there were about 70 of them. But these battles were between neighbors. The skirmishes, the warfare took place between people who were on one side and the other of a border, or in some cases, were within the same borders of a country or empire. But the bloodiest conflict that took place in the 16th century was not fought in Europe, but in Mexico. Gladwell goes on to write about the first exchange between the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez and the Aztec ruler Montezuma II. As Gladwell tells the story, neither Montezuma nor Cortez spoke the other man's language, nor did they understand or really have any appreciation for the other's culture. The first exchange between these two men was facilitated, and it would be a stretch to use that word to characterize, facilitate, by a series of translators. And I mean a series. And the result, if it had not been so tragic, would have been comical. You know, I think, what happened. Now, why do I share this story? Because I believe that what we are experiencing today is an attempt to talk with strangers. You can parse this out along age lines, and Dr. Schultz shows in his video how people in their 20s coming right out of college are in many ways quite different from people in their 60s. And these are people of the same race and from the same town. So you could parse it out along age lines. You can parse it out along racial lines. You can parse it out along political or ideological lines. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that the gaps between us, whether young, old, black, white, brown, conservative, liberal, progressive, are quite wide. Perhaps the chasm is deeper than most of us would appreciate or like to acknowledge. Now, I'm not preaching doom here. The sky is not falling. Rather, what I am saying is that as we begin the conversations that I'm encouraging you to have, we have some work to do. Long, hard, difficult work that will call for patience and willingness to lean in. I'm not talking about a scrape that can be covered over by a Band-Aid. Rather, I think we're looking at wounds that will take some time and energy to cleanse and heal. But I would encourage you to take the time and to do the work and to begin the process of healing and cleansing those wounds. I don't think we really have any option. We have to walk back from where we have come, where we are. We have to work to come across that divide and bridge that chasm. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, I hope that you would like and comment and share with others. I look forward to next week's episode. In the meantime, let's listen, let's try to understand, and let's engage in those difficult conversations. Thanks.